It's August 3rd here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with 2023 World Scout Jamboree in South Korea's Saemangeum. The world's largest youth camping festival officially kicked off with a grand opening ceremony. The 25th edition is now in full swing in its largest ever scale. The entire country continues to reel under extreme heat wave, with some parts expected to experience temperatures as high as 38 degrees Celsius. Recent data shows the U.S. labor market is doing better than expected, seeing private employment jump by over 320,000 in July. Down on South Korea's west coast in Saemangeum, the 2023 World Scout Jamboree is well underway. The opening ceremony took the center stage on day 2 of the 12-day event. Our Choi Soo-hyung's at the Jamboree campground.
The 25th World Scout Jamboree entered its second day in Saemangeum on Wednesday with a variety of programs for scouts to enjoy, as well as the event's official opening ceremony. Despite the long distance traveled and record-breaking heat in Korea, the scouts persevered and showed their resilience.
I became a scout because my family and my sister tell me that Scout is a very beautiful place to be. It's a very sensational experience.
So this is the place where Scouts actually stay. Here, children set up tents and prepare next programs.
The teenage scouts also share their experiences of setting up the tents themselves on the first day and how they felt during the process.
I put it all together like at 10 p.m. so it was kind of difficult because of the light. It was night, but it was really cool. It was really cool. Everything was perfectly fine.
Former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon was also there to attend the opening ceremony of the Ban Ki-moon Village, close to the Jamboree campsite and named in honor of the former UN chief, where eco-friendly lectures and discussions were held to commemorate the Jamboree. Additionally, the last Cyclodiste team from France arrived at Saemangeum after an impressive 14,000 kilometers bicycle journey from Paris to promote eco-friendly practices as well and deliver messages of hope to the young scouts.
So the theme of the Jamboree is Draw Your Dream, and our dream was to make this big challenge to go from a part of the world to the other part. We crossed half of the world, I think, to come here, and it was such an adventure, such an exploration, and we want to say to the scouts in the Jamboree, be explorers and have big dream.
At 8 p.m., the opening ceremony started with an enthusiastic live performance by the Dream Orchestra composed of Korean Scout members. Survivor expert Bear Grylls and K-pop artists also celebrate the event, and thrilling fireworks greeted scouts from around the world at Saemangeum. President Yoon Suk-yeol of South Korea, himself a former Scout member, welcomed scouts with a paper airplane flying performance.
잼버리 기간 동안 즐겁고 건강하게 즐기시고 대원들끼리 깊은 우정을 나누시기 바랍니다. 그리고 이 우정이 앞으로 계속되기를 바랍니다.
But amid the positive vibes, there were some safety concerns as some 480 people at the event were treated for heat-related illness on Tuesday and Wednesday. The Jamboree continues until August 12th. Choi Soo-hyung, Arirang News, Saemangeum.
The suffocating heat continues here in South Korea, and it's going to be only hotter today after reaching 35 degrees Celsius yesterday. Our Song Yu-jin reports.
The deadly summer heat this year has taken the lives of at least 16 people. That's according to the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency as of 4 p.m. Wednesday. This is almost 3 times what was reported last year. With this intense, prolonged heat wave, the Interior Ministry raised the heat crisis level to the highest severe from the second highest alert on Tuesday evening for the first time in 4 years. This level is issued when the feels-like temperature is forecast to reach 35 degrees Celsius or above for 3 or more days in over 40% of the country's weather report districts, or when the temperature is expected to hit 38 degrees Celsius or above in 10% of the weather districts. Daytime high temperatures on Wednesday surpassed 35 degrees Celsius in many parts of the country. So as we move into the evening, the temperature has cooled down a bit. But it's still 32 degrees Celsius here, and it looks like we're heading for a tropical night. Earlier in the day, the mercury soared to almost 39 degrees Celsius in Yeoju City of Gyeonggi-do Province and 38 degrees in the east coast city of Gangneung. And so people are doing their best to find relief from the heat, seeking out shade like here at Cheonggyecheon Stream in central Seoul.
I feel like the weather is even hotter than yesterday. Dipping my toes in the cool water feels good.
And in Spain now is the same here, very, very hot, extreme.
In response, the Central Disaster and Safety Countermeasures Headquarters has ordered relevant government ministries and local governments to strengthen real-time monitoring and come up with measures for people who are most vulnerable to the heat, such as the elderly, construction workers, and farmers. People should refrain from going outside during the hottest time of the day between noon and 5 p.m. Drink plenty of water, and if you experience symptoms like dizziness, nausea, or headaches, which are common signs of heat-related illness, reach out for help immediately or visit a doctor. 송유진, Arirang News.
And this record-breaking heat is showing no signs of abating in many parts of the globe. In fact, 80% of the global population experienced higher than normal temperatures last month. Lee Seung-jae has more.
It's the middle of the day in Iran, yet banks and shops in downtown areas are closed. It's unusual to see these places closed at a time when there's usually a sizable volume of foot traffic. However, with Iran seeing record-breaking temperatures this week, the government declared a 2-day shutdown due to health concerns as the intense heat wave in the Middle Eastern nation saw temperatures rise past 50 degrees Celsius.
I have never experienced such heat in Tehran. I have experienced it in the south of Iran when I was there for a while.
The Americas are also experiencing a brutal summer. The Argentine capital, Buenos Aires, is seeing temperatures 5 degrees Celsius higher than temperatures normally experienced at this time of the year. Over in the U.S. state of Arizona, the region saw a month of temperatures reaching 43 degrees Celsius. Even the cactus, known for resilience against the heat, have been withering away due to the intense weather. And in Greece, too, where tourism has been hit hard due to wildfires caused by the heat wave, a decision has been made to compensate vacationers who are impacted by the mass evacuations there. According to climate change watchdog Climate Central, 4 out of 5 people on the planet had a hotter July, and it says climate change is the main reason for the global heat wave. And global warming will also damage the economy, according to economists. International credit rating agency Moody's predicted that the increase in temperature due to continuous heat waves could shrink global GDP by 17.6% by 2100. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
Now, the coronavirus has been spreading a lot more in the past few weeks here in South Korea, with the country seeing cases reach 60% of levels seen at last year's winter peak. Is South Korea ready to lower infectious disease level? Shin Se-byuk reports.
The Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency says the timeline for lowering the infectious disease level of COVID-19 will be handled with more care. According to the head of the KDCA, Chi Young-mi, on Wednesday, the number of new infections is at 60% of last winter's peak. She also mentioned that by mid-August, the daily average of new cases could reach 60,000, with a peak of up to 76,000. In fact, South Korea has seen a rise in new COVID-19 cases for the 5th consecutive week. Last week alone, over 310,000 people tested positive for the virus. That's up nearly 24% compared to the week before. The same official said that a decision on when to lower the disease level will be made after considering various factors, such as COVID-19 trends both at home and abroad, and the advice of experts. The health authority plans to lower the infectious disease level of COVID-19 to Class 4, the lowest level in the 4-tier classification system, as early as this month. With this adjustment, the remaining mask mandate at general hospitals and other high-risk facilities will be lifted. Also, the government will stop monitoring people who have contracted COVID-19. Regarding the complete lifting of the mask mandate, the commissioner stated that specific guidelines will be announced next week after reviewing the risk that the adjustment could pose to high-risk groups. While the KDCA says it is unlikely for COVID-19 to pose a significant threat again, it expects that there could be 1 or 2 surges a year for the time being. It also advises people to wear masks in high-risk places and to quarantine for 5 days if they test positive. 신세벽 Arirang News.
So, South Korea plans to lower its COVID-19's risk rating to the lowest level, Class 4, on the infectious diseases risk classification scale as a part of its 3-step endemic roadmap. For more, we're joined by Dr. David Kwok this morning. It's great to have you back.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
So right now, COVID-19 is ranked Class 2, which is the second highest rating alongside other high-risk diseases like cholera. Now, what does it mean to have the virus rating lowered from Class 2 to 4?
Well, the biggest difference there would be is that from classes 1 to 3, the doctors are mandated to report to the government so that the government can actually have a keen eyes on how many cases each infectious diseases bring about. But when it goes down to classification 4, the doctors are no longer mandated to report it. It's just that the government still needs to keep an observance of how many cases these diseases that belong to class 4 will bring about, except it's not expected to cause, let's say, dire consequences such as many cases of deaths. So those illnesses that belong to classification 4, it's rather relaxed in regards to the government's monitoring.
Sure, you still do have to stay vigilant, but there are definitely less mandatory tasks for both doctors and patients, right?
That's correct.
Then there'll be an advisory committee meeting before the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency implements this decision, possibly as early as next week. Then how likely is it that the risk rating will be lowered to the lowest level? I mean, any variables that will make the process a bit more complicated?
Well, this is just my personal opinion, but obviously the biggest variable that will factor into the decision making is the current peak we're observing. Even though it's not as high as what we've experienced in the last winter, but what I believe is that many people nowadays are not actually being tested for COVID-19 despite being suspected of having it. So the number currently we're seeing is not completely reflective of the total numbers that should be counted for. So considering that factor, I think we have to still go through this peak once again and observe whether or not it will create more severe cases. And if that is so, I think the decision making to bring down the classification level will be sort of delayed. But if in case this peak does not create as much of the severe cases and it goes as expected to be just like any other common cold symptoms or even in more serious cases just like influenza, then they might possibly make the decision to actually lower. But I don't think it's likely that they will bring it down this month because we're still going through the yet another peak at this moment.
Right, exactly. I have a handful list of people who have been infected recently. Then the question is, why is it that the virus is going around a lot more frequently or often in the past few weeks? Is it the new variants, ease the virus rules, and should we expect a resurgence of the virus? Or are we there already?
Well, obviously, there will be multiples of different factors that are causing the peak that we're going through. I don't think it's necessarily a new variant that we are experiencing. The most common variants that are sort of detected is XBB.192 at this moment within our country, but that's yet another subvariant of Omicron variant, so it's not something completely new. But obviously, social factors. A lot of people nowadays are sort of mingling much more together and actually going to these different traveling sites and then socializing a lot more, sort of in a compensation way that for what they have lost in the past 3 years or so due to strict social distancing guidelines. But there would also possibly be another factor from possibly waning of immunity against COVID-19 that we receive from either prior infections or having from vaccinations. So I think it is quite possible that a lot of medical sectors would now start to think about possibly implementing or tertiary or fourth vaccination program as well.
Sure. Another new guideline on the way is possibly there's speculation that the downgrade could lift the remaining mask mandates for medical facilities and other vulnerable inpatient locations, right? Now, do you think that's possible or even a good idea? I mean, are we ready for a life completely without masks?
Well, this is yet again another just personal opinion of mine, is that lifting the mandates for the mask has already been partially taken, and we're observing in the streets that people who wants to be rather more strictly protected, they are still wearing their masks. So I guess in a sense that lifting the mandates or giving a new guidance to actually giving people the freedom to not wear their mask if they feel free to do so, would be okay in a sense that people are still choosing to. So in this, yet again, this time of peak that we're going through, we're observing a lot of people who has to go inside in an enclosed spaces such as hospitals, well, not hospitals because they're mandated, but let's say subways or public spaces. A lot of people who are rather more elderly or people who are much younger, they are choosing to actually still wear the mask. So even if the government was to make the decision to actually lower the classification and lift up the mandates for people wearing the mask, I think it will be okay because people now have the conscience to actually choose to wear the mask.
Sure. Thank you so much for your insight this morning. You have a good day.
You too. Thank you.
Recent data suggests the labor market in the U.S. is proving resilient, despite a series of Federal Reserve interest rate hikes to slow inflation. According to human resources company Automatic Data Processing on Tuesday local time, private employers in the U.S. added over 320,000 jobs in July, around double Wall Street expectations. Now, the growth was attributed to more jobs in the leisure and hospitality sectors, while manufacturing continued to decline for the fifth month in a row. This comes as the U.S. Labor Department announced the results of its monthly survey for June, which showed a decline in layoffs. South Korean adults are not so happy. That's according to a happiness index released by the Korea Disease Control and Prevention Agency on Thursday. According to a happiness survey conducted on 226,545 adults aged 19 or older, South Korean adults averaged 6.68 out of a possible 10, scoring relatively low. Just 34.7% of the participants said they were subjectively happy. Now, by gender, men were slightly happier than women, with 35.4% and 34.2% respectively answering they were happy. The research also showed that the elderly were in the lowest bracket in the happiness index. K-pop girl group NewJeans has topped the main Billboard album chart with its latest album, only a year since the group's debut. NewJeans' second extended play album, Get Out, ranked first on the Billboard 200 chart as of Wednesday, making the group second K-pop girl group to accomplish such a feat. The first K-pop girl group to reach #1 is Blackpink with the album Born Pink. Meanwhile, Super Shy, one of the title tracks on the Get Up album, is currently 3rd on the Billboard Global 200 chart.
Good morning, I'm Matthew Ashley, and we now turn over to stories from around the world. We begin in the United States, where a federal jury on Wednesday sentenced to death the gunman who 5 years ago killed 11 worshippers at a synagogue in Pittsburgh. Now, the 12-member jury's decision was unanimous, which is a requirement for the death sentence to be imposed. It's the first federal death sentence under the Biden administration. Back in October 2018, gunman Robert Bowers entered the Tree of Life synagogue and shot people with an assault rifle. 7 others were injured in the attack, including 5 police officers. It was the deadliest attack on Jewish people in U.S. history. Now, in Brazil, at least 45 people have been killed in police raids targeting drug gangs across 3 states. In Rio de Janeiro, 10 people died in a shootout with police officers and 4 others were injured. And in Sao Paulo state, 16 people, including 2 police officers, died in a 5-day raid called Operation Shield, which was sparked by the death of a police officer there last Thursday. Another 58 people were arrested and guns and narcotics were seized. But the operation was criticized by Brazil's justice minister as being a disproportionate reaction to the original crime. Meanwhile, in police raids in the northeastern state of Bahia, 19 other suspects have also been killed since Friday. Moving on to the 2023 FIFA Women's World Cup, it was a day of firsts on Wednesday, as South Africa qualified for the round of 16 for the very first time. Banyana beat Italy 3-2 in Wellington with an injury time winner. Italy drew first blood with a penalty before an own goal meant the score was level at half-time. South Africa took the lead, but an Italy equalizer meant South Africa were facing elimination until a goal by Thembi Kgatlana in the 92nd minute won them the game. In other firsts, Brazil crashed out in the group stages of the tournament after a goalless draw in a must-win match against Jamaica in Melbourne. The result means that Jamaica will also be playing in the round of 16 for the first time. And finally, a gigantic whale that swam in the world's oceans 14 million years ago may be the heaviest animal ever. This according to a study published in the science journal Nature on Wednesday. The study estimates that the animal, known as a Parasitus colossus, after its place of discovery, could have weighed up to 340 metric tons. It could have grown to 25 meters long, which is shorter than a blue whale. But scientists say it could have weighed more than its modern-day counterpart. This extra weight comes from denser bones, allowing the Parasitus colossus to swim along the ocean floor. The estimates were made by studying a partial skeleton consisting of 13 vertebrae, 4 ribs and 1 hip bone.
Good morning. Korea is seeing the peak of summertime heat and temperatures look to rise a bit further this afternoon. And Gangneung sweated through a super tropical night with overnight temperatures refusing to drop below 30 degrees last night. And this afternoon it will go up to 38 degrees Celsius. The weather agency is forecasting the chance of passing rain in southern areas along with thunder and lightning during the day. And the capital area will be under sizzling sunshine with strong UV rays at a high of 35 degrees. Saemangeum in Buan County will have high heat at 35 degrees as well, about 95 degrees in Fahrenheit with a chance of passing rain in the mid-afternoon. If you're feeling unwell, do not hesitate to ask for help. Drink plenty of water, avoid or reduce drinking energy drinks and coffee, and eat light meals instead to stay well in a heat wave. Intense summer heat continues to bake the peninsula through next week. That's Korea for you, and here's a look at the international weather conditions.
We thank you for watching New Day at Arirang. We'll be back tomorrow at 9 a.m. Korea time.